After experiencing the horrifying ordeal that I'm about to relate to you, I'll never see the workplace the same way again. I had just passed the bar and got my first gig at a high-powered law firm in the city, and I couldn't have been more thrilled. It paid well, the work sounded meaningful, and I even got my own office. What more could I ask for? The interview process went smoothly, and I met with my soon-to-be boss for tea before officially signing the papers. She was a middle-aged, smallish woman, very unassuming at first, perhaps meek if I could go so far. Our conversation over tea filled me with all sorts of excitement about the possibilities ahead. My boss, let's call her Megan, told me how talented I was. She went on and on about how happy she was to be having me on her team, and what a bright future I had ahead of me in my field. Before my first day, we'd occasionally email each other to go over some logistics, and she'd always sign off with a smiley face or a heart emoji. My first day finally arrived on a cold, wet April morning. The weather wasn't going to get me down, and I waltzed into the office with a bright smile on my face. One of my coworkers, Sam, greeted me and escorted me to my office. Sam said he'd been with the company for about 3 months, so he was relatively new too. Megan was on a call and would be right with me, he said, so I should sit tight for a few minutes. A few minutes faded into a half hour. By the time 9:30 hit, I was growing anxious just sitting in my office by myself. I tried logging into my computer, but had to take security training first, so there wasn't much I could do. Megan emerged from her office at 9:35 and called me in. Okay, this was it. Time to find out my schedule for the day, I thought to myself. Right then, Megan, whose back was facing me, turned around and said, "You know, Sam's been wanting your job for a while now." "Huh?" I said, dumbfounded. "He applied for your job, but he's not qualified. Yet," she continued. I stood there aghast. What was she trying to say? And why would those words be the first out of her mouth? Then she called Sam into her office and told him to pull out my onboarding schedule. Sam instructed me to do my computer training and other tasks. All that took up a majority of the day. For the rest of that week, Megan said she had a business trip to go on, so I was largely left with Sam to learn the ropes. I couldn't place my finger on it, but something about that first week felt off. Maybe it was because we were a team of only 3, and Megan was under a lot of pressure. At least, that's what I told myself at the time. The next Monday, Sam and I had to present a couple slides to Megan that we drafted. They were about an upcoming legal case the firm was working on. We met in Megan's office. As soon as she opened the slides on her monitor, she began grumbling to us, saying we did it all wrong. Then she turned to me and pointed her bony finger in my face. "You're supposed to be the research lead," she hissed. "Would you like to explain to me why you wrote these slides like this? My high school daughter could have done a better job." My mouth hung open, and Sam stood there, bleary-eyed and looking beaten down. We'd spent almost 5 hours working on these 2 slides, pouring all our energy into it, and this is what we got? Sam and I went back to my office and redrafted the slides, taking the feedback, if you could call it that, from our boss. From there, things only got worse. Megan would demean our work during meetings regularly. She was constantly late to the office, and she always seemed to be on the go, from one event to another around town, like a whirlwind that never stopped. About a month into the job, I heard about a company-wide retreat taking place at our satellite office about 30 miles away. Sam and I asked Megan about attending, but she said the event, quote, didn't apply to us, and we should take it off our calendars. So that's what we did. Strangely, the day of the retreat, Megan texted Sam and me, saying she would be away on business that day. The next week, Rachel from the satellite office emailed me. She said it was unfortunate that Sam and I were the only ones from the company who weren't able to make it to the retreat because everyone else had such a good time. When I read this, my blood almost boiled. And this wasn't even the first time I caught Megan lying. She seemed to lie about everything. I soon realized things were reaching a breaking point. Megan's texts to Sam and me were becoming more nasty, more vicious, more disrespectful all the time. Late one afternoon, the three of us were reviewing a report I wrote with Sam when Megan started pointing her finger in my face again, telling me how I needed to do a better job, or else. That's when I had it. "You'd better adjust your tone when you're speaking to me," I asserted. Then, the unthinkable happened. Megan's face twitched and spasmed with an infernal rage, and her body thrust itself backwards as if she were possessed. This is what it must look like to be triggered, I thought. She was going to call HR on me, she said, choking through her convulsions. I turned and looked at Sam. He stood there, as white as a ghost. That's when I turned on my heel and walked out of her office. Early the following morning, HR called me and said that I was fired. My boss was on this call too. The HR rep said it had come to the company's attention that I was chronically underperforming, and given the tough financial times, they decided to let me go. Megan sat in her little video box on my screen, her black pupils getting wider and wider all the while. I'd never seen someone so giddy in my life. I remained calm throughout the call, saying nothing more than I needed. Sending my laptop back to the company was easy enough, and that was that. After a couple months, I discovered on LinkedIn that Sam, too, was no longer working at that law firm, but I wasn't sure what happened. After I got fired, I never heard from him again. Looking back, I consider myself lucky to have gotten away from Megan. I later identified her as a toxic narcissist, and since then, there's been no going back. It's disgusting how these toxic people surround themselves with equally toxic and dysfunctional enablers, but that's their problem, not mine. Never again will I blindly walk into any relationship before I evaluate who it is I'm forging bonds with.